The Oklahoma City Thunder are officially NBA champions. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been crowned Finals MVP, putting a cap on one of the greatest individual seasons of all time, a scoring title, a unanimous All-NBA first team, an MVP, leading the team to the most wins in the NBA, and capping it off with a championship and Finals MVP himself. They escaped one of the most resilient teams I've ever seen in this Indiana Pacers team, one of the most unstoppable offenses I've ever seen, and that's specifically referring to TJ McConnell attacking the paint there. It wasn't the game 7 that I think we all hope for, Sam Oshtry, but myself and Sam are here to break things down here. So, Sam, my opening question to you off the bat here is give the Thunder your – I'll let you take the floor and give the Thunder their flowers, because before we dive into a bunch of other things, I do think we should lead with that.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad we are, because obviously it wasn't the game 7 we all hoped, and that just was because of Tyrese Haliburton's injury that happened in the first quarter, which is just brutal. I mean, there's just no way around it. It just absolutely sucks for him, what he was able to do this season and this postseason to carry this team one win away from an NBA champion, the most unlikely champion they would have been in probably NBA history. Just an improbable run, and Tyrese Haliburton was at the center of it. And just to see him play through a calf injury where that risk is always there. We saw it with Kevin Durant in 2019, where he came back from a calf injury in his first game back from a calf injury in those NBA Finals against the Raptors. He tore his Achilles. So there's always the possibility of that when you're playing on a calf strain. But credit to Tyrese Haliburton for gutting it through. And it's just brutal. It's just sad. It sucks. Obviously, his next season is completely cooked, which means the Pacers' next season is completely cooked, and we'll get into what that means for the East. But before we do all of that, and we talk about this Pacers team and what this means, I don't want to hear any asterisks. I don't want to hear anything about this Thunder group, because this Thunder team earned this NBA title. We're not just talking about a young NBA championship team. We're talking about a group that historically, statistically, is up there with one of the best champions of all time. Among all champions, third best defensive rating relative to the rest of the league, behind the 04 Pistons and the 2017 Warriors, and then it was the 2025 Oklahoma City Thunder. This team was that great defensively. As a team, their net rating during the regular season was the second best in NBA history, only to the 1995-96 Chicago Bulls. When you look at all the statistics, 68 wins, everything they were able to accomplish, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander becoming the first player in 25 years to win the scoring title, regular season MVP, and finals MVP. Everything they were able to accomplish individually, as a collective, this is a dominant champion. And yeah, they were taking the 7 games twice because they're young. And the last thing I want to say about the Thunder is everyone's talking about how improbable this Pacers run was the whole time. We're like, this Pacers run is just improbable. They were underdogs. No one believed in them. And yeah, all that's true. This Thunder run is also improbable. Young teams, not just young teams, the youngest team in the NBA, the youngest champion over 40 years, they don't win NBA championships. You need experience. You need age and veteran presence, and they had some of that. But teams where your second best player is Jalen Williams in his third NBA season, your third best player is probably Chet Holmgren in his second NBA season. And teams that young don't win. Teams that young just don't win championships. They just don't. So this is so improbable of a run for how they were 6 years ago when they were one of the worst teams in the league. 2 years ago, they missed the playoffs entirely. How they rebuilt this group from Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook into this team 12 years, 13 years later, an NBA championship group. It's just an improbable run by that entire the entire executive team, the entire coaching staff, all the players. This is such an incredible, historic, unprecedented run for such a young group, and they should be celebrated as such.
Yeah, it has been an absolutely masterful and artful roster construction example from Sam Presti from start to finish. That he had his vision, he saw it through, and he's obviously accomplished it, and they're not done yet. But I think the unique aspect of this Thunder team, or what I think honestly deserves the most praise, is how they still have so many moves that they can make, or so many directions that they can go as a franchise. So many picks still accumulated, and they've just nailed their draft process these past couple years. Getting Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams, both guys that, like Jalen Williams in particular, even the biggest Jalen Williams believers, I don't think ever could have guessed he would have been this quickly. And getting Shai is the guy that is the face of everything. Like, this team, like you said, they missed the playoffs 2 years ago. They were 40-42, below 500 2 seasons ago. But here they are, that they did things on their timeline. They stacked days. They took the steps. They did not rush the process here. And they weren't a team that went too all in too quickly. They still have plenty of directions they can go. I totally agree. There should be no asterisk over last night. If this was a championship, and it does feel like a season to me, that the NBA got it right, that the best team in the league are the champions. I think that's how we should remember this series to an extent. But the thing I would push back a little bit, I understand the defensive metrics, the numbers. Do you really think this Thunder team is among like the best NBA teams of all time?
It's tough because, look, when you go to some of the best champions, like 2017 Warriors, the Bulls, some of those Heat teams, some of those Kobe teams,
I'll cook this Thunder team.
Some of the Spurs teams. Of course, those teams are better, but when you actually, it's hard to know what this group will become and what some of these individual players will become. Like, we could be looking at when NBA historians might be looking at this in 30 years down the line and say, oh, that was Jalen Williams' beginning. Yeah. Jalen Williams became one of the top 30 players in NBA history. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander won a couple more MVPs. How do we look at him in terms of his NBA ranking in history? Chet Holmgren, all these guys. And so, yeah, like on paper, I don't think, certainly not right now because of their accolades, they're not close to those guys. What they might become is different because Jalen Williams hasn't even hit his peak or his prime, not even close to it. Same with Chet. I don't even know if Shai's necessarily hit his prime. He's not even 27 years old yet. And that's crazy to say about the guy who just won the regular season MVP and finals MVP. So when we look back on paper, it probably will be like, oh, this championship team that couldn't compare with them at all. But then you look at the statistical measures, and it's the defense. Like, this defense was so historically dominant. And I want to get to some of the other stuff later, but they weren't a good three-point shooting team. They kind of defied what we knew about modern NBA offense because of how much they played with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as an isolation player and didn't rely on their three-point efficiency at all. They increased the three-point volume. The three-point efficiency was way down. They were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the playoffs, and they were still able to do it because of historically dominant defense. So I hope we all remember that what it's going to be with this Thunder group is their defense, and it was one of the greatest defenses in NBA history. So yeah, I don't think they're the best champion ever, but I do think this team as a unit, their defense could go to toe-to-toe with some of these other dynastic runs that we've seen, like the Spurs and the Lakers and a lot of these LeBron teams.
Yeah, I think that's somewhat fair there. As part, like, the defensive numbers don't lie. I won't lie. Like, watching this Thunder team throughout the playoff run, there is a bit of a feeling to me of like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is on a level that none of these other guys are, and that kind of applies to the entire NBA to an extent, but specifically on this like Thunder team. Jalen Williams grew up in a way that I wasn't sure would be the case this quickly. And Chet Holmgren, I really think, is only scratching the surface of what he's going to do at the NBA
level. He was
level.
so dominant defensively last night. He was bad offensively the whole series, but defensively, this dude is unbelievable.
Absolutely. And he dominated that. And shout out to him for, like, if you want to circle back to last year, which I do think it's unique. There weren't like these playoff heartbreaks that they've had. That's probably the only thing that I think is kind of an outlier for them. But when you circle back to last year when they were eliminated in the playoffs, one of the biggest concerns was Chet Holmgren, that he could not hold up as the lone big man. They brought in Isaiah Hartenstein, and he was certainly necessary in that Denver series, which ended up probably being their biggest challenge, although we'll circle back to Indiana. Certainly gave them a run for their money by any means there. But Chet grew up and was able to be the guy this year. Now, I guess to bring this into the Pacers conversation, we'll start with Tyrese.
Before we do that, last thing on the Thunder is I was glad to see this team won the title last night in the Game 7 based on how they actually got here, which was the other thing I remember about this Thunder team is how much they dominated the possession battle. Like, this team never turned the ball over. Number one in turnover rate, meaning they never turned the ball over as little as anyone in the NBA. And number one in forced turnover rate, meaning they constantly turned other teams over. And that's what happened last night, where the Pacers had 21 turnovers, and the Thunder just got out in transition, had so many points in transition off of those turnovers, and then themselves, they never turned the ball over. So how much they dominated the possession battle was kind of the story of this Thunder team all season, and it showed up in Game 7. And the other thing is they shot 27% from three last night. Like they were able to win games throughout these playoffs by shooting so poorly from three. 33% from three in the entire playoffs. That was 13 among 16 playoff teams. So this team, and we saw it last year with Boston, and everyone was complaining earlier on this season. It's like, oh, the NBA, oh, you shoot a million threes. That's all the NBA is. It's awful to watch. So it's a bad product, this and that, and a bunch of BS that people were spewing. And now you see a team that's not a good three-point shooting team and that struggled to make threes, and they were able to cap off the NBA championship, meaning there's a lot of different ways and play styles to win based on your personnel.
Yeah, definitely right about that. They made 2 3-pointers from one of the games in these NBA finals. Like, that does not happen in today's NBA. Now, we're not doing the asterisk. We're not doing that you have to, put a little mark next to this Thunder championship. But I do have to ask Sam Oshtry, if Tyrese Haliburton does not pop his Achilles in the first quarter there, are we talking about this game differently last night?
Well, of course we're talking about it differently. Like, who am I? Who's anyone to sit here and say the Pacers would have won? Like, who knows? Like, Tyrese Haliburton started out the game really hot. He made 3 threes, which was pretty impressive.
Talking his talk.
Yeah, and also the thing about Tyrese Haliburton is for him to maintain his aggression offensively, and that means as a passer and a scorer, he needs to score early. Yeah. And what you saw from him was he was scoring early. His 3-ball was falling. So I felt like this was going to be a huge Haliburton scoring night. The Thunder would have adjusted defensively. He was not going to rain in threes the whole night. I don't know who's going to win the game. Of course, we would have talked about it differently because I think it would have been a much more competitive game. You saw when Tyrese Haliburton went down, it's just the entire offense. Like, Pascal Siakam can't be the guy when there's extra defensive attention paid to him. The Pacers tried to go small at one point where they sat Siakam for a large shift because the Thunder applied so much ball pressure. And as good as TJ McConnell is, and he just defies all basketball logic, he's not a guy who can create the way Tyrese Haliburton can. Like, they weren't getting downhill. They weren't collapsing the defense. The movement of when Tyrese Haliburton will pass to a wing and then set an off-ball screen or cut immediately. Like, he's Curry. He's not the shooter Curry is, but he's Curry-like with his off-ball movement. And then that's what opens up this entire Pacers offense a lot of the time. So without Tyrese Haliburton there, like, they just had no shot. It was impressive. They were up 1 at halftime even. It just completely changed the dynamic of this team. So, yeah, of course, the game would have been different. I'm not going to sit here and say the Pacers would have won necessarily. Who knows? But, of course, it would have been different. It just sucks. That's the cruel part of sports.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right that like for Haliburton specifically, the biggest frustration that I think is legitimate with him is when he is too passive. And I was so thrilled last night when he started off that game clearly locked in, clearly in attack mode. Like, I think the critique of him is he's never afraid. He's certainly never afraid. He's shown that he takes big shots, but he kind of like overthinks it to where I'm trying to be team first. I'm trying to play make too much, and that sometimes hurts the Pacers. Last night that was not the case, and I did send out an all-time most cursed tweet of literally 2 minutes before. The exact way that it went down is after he hit that third 3, going to commercials, puffing his chest, talking trash. I was like, this is the Tyrese Haliburton I wanted to see. And I believe I tweeted, this is the aggressive Tyrese Haliburton that should have Thunder fans worried. That calf looks fine, ... Turns
the
out
calf did look fine too. And it was game 6, the calf looked fine. And I was like, and obviously a lot of people were like, okay, maybe it's not as big of a concern as the Pacers played it up to be. But of course, obviously there was the strain there, which led to the eventual Achilles. So yeah, it looked fine, and he was moving really well. But I guess that's kind of what happens with calf injuries, that you can actually move well on them. But there is the possibility where you're more likely to rupture that Achilles, which we don't know for sure, but I think we're pretty damn sure that's what he did.
Yeah, and obviously prayers up. Feel horrible for Tyrese Haliburton. Never want to see anybody go through this. I do want to put a quick interjection here. For all the Tyrese Haliburton should not have played last night, or the organization should have held him out.
You're directing this at one person specifically, because I only saw it from one person.
From John Jansen, specifically, you're talking about. I saw a lot of it on the timeline, to be honest. Really? I saw a couple different people running with it. And this is where we've lost the plot here. Last night was game 7 of the NBA Finals. I understand that these guys have bright futures, that you do have to think of the long term, that like preventing and protecting guys' careers matters now more so than ever. But it's still game 7 of the NBA Finals. And Tyrese Haliburton was clearly willing to take that risk. I guarantee once the dust settles and Tyrese Haliburton settles in, that he would have done that 10 times out of 10. That there is something about this is what you work for. These are the games that you play for. I respect Tyrese Haliburton for suiting up. I hate that this happened to him, but that's just sort of the brutal reality of sports in my mind.
Sometimes I think there was a tweet a while ago that I saw that was very relatable. It was like half of Twitter, half of social media is just people arguing about something that people aren't actually saying
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
getting mad about. So it's like, yeah, I'm sure there were people out there saying that. It's just ridiculous. Like Tyrese Haliburton would play that in that game 7. If he tore his Achilles before, he would try to play that game 7. Of course, doctors wouldn't let him. But there's nothing that was going to stop him from playing. It was a game 7. Not just get back to a game 7, but the Pacers aren't guaranteed, even with Tyrese Haliburton healthy, to ever get back to the finals ever
Right.
again.
Right.
There was absolutely nothing that could have stopped Tyrese Haliburton from playing in the Pacers. You could say, oh, it's in his best interest. And, you hope he returns back as the same player. You have no idea. He's pretty young, so he should, but you have no idea. And so, of course, theoretically, doctors should help or should prevent him from risking his long-term future. But that's just not how this works. Like, this is game 7 of the NBA Finals. He was playing. The Pacers should have let him play, which they did, of course. And that's just a risk that he knew and everybody knew that existed. And we're seeing more Achilles than ever. Like with Damian Lillard this playoffs, Jason Tatum this playoffs. Yeah. We've seen just over the last few years the Achilles injury in not just NBA, but a lot of sports around the leagues. Achilles has just become a really prominent, unfortunate injury.
And I wanted to ask about that specifically because, for starters, the number one thing that shifted to me is for a lot of times, like the Achilles tear in my mind was sort of viewed as like the death kiss of someone's career. That this was guys hanging on at the tail end when you are aging and in the later years of his career where you pick up these. We're now seeing Tyrese Haliburton is 24 years old. Jason Tatum is 26 years old. Like, these are guys in the prime, their athletic prime, in like the middle of their best years. What is going on? Why is this increase? Do you have any sort of tell or feel this is the best modern medicine we've ever received? These guys have access to facilities and recovery programs in ways that were never the case before. Why do you feel that these are spiking and getting younger in age?
Well, so with the uptick of Achilles injuries, we've also seen that, like you just said, people are able to recover from them better, where 2 decades ago, an Achilles injury was a death sentence for your career. You could not recover for it. Now we see Kevin Durant return as a better player, even post Achilles, and that was on the other side of 30. So with that modern medicine and all these advancements and everything, the Achilles injury is not some death sentence anymore. You can return from it. To answer your question, why they're become more prevalent, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physical therapist. I don't know exactly, but I have read about this a lot. Like going back like 6-7 years ago, people have talked about this, and it's a much broader conversation, but it's really specialization versus generalization, where guys at a much younger age are specializing in certain sports and not playing other sports. And this is something like Kobe Bryant talks about all the time, of how important it is to train your muscles by playing a bunch of different sports. And there's a lot of other benefits too, mentally, physically, to growing up playing a lot of sports instead of specializing in such a young age. But now with AAU culture and how young guys are getting recruited and possibility of NIL and getting paid in high school, these guys are playing strictly basketball or strictly whatever their sport is at such a young age. And it's so much of it. It's constant 4 or 5 games a day, 6-7 games throughout a weekend over a 2-day span for these tournaments. And it's just not good for your body. It's not like, this is what I've read. I mean, I don't know exactly, but this is just what I've read from like real experts, people who've studied this stuff going back 6-7 years, where there's just been more injuries in the NBA. It's just specializing in one sport, specifically basketball, at such a young age and not training other muscles can lead to kind of these strains. And I think that's a real problem with youth sports. And I don't know if there's a fix, because it's kind of the culture that you have to do, where you have to be playing basketball all the time if you're actually going to succeed or have goals of playing professional sports. But it's contributing to more injuries. So there's no easy fix, but it's really that specialization versus generalization conversation.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of truth to that there. I did start my collegiate career out as a looking to become a physical therapist. Here I am talking sports, so we all see how that went there. But I did write like
you have some insight.
Yeah, I did write like a 20-page research paper a lot about this, and it was in particular in a slant to ACL tears. I tore my ACL, so that kind of hits home for me. So that was one that I've always had a little bit of an interest for. They talked a lot about like artificial turf and things like that. The specialization versus generalization. You're absolutely right. That's a huge topic. But I also think sometimes like there is no clear answer to this. And I think more so than anything, just watch NBA basketball now versus NBA basketball back in the day. I get that those guys played 82 games, played a ton of minutes, traveled. They didn't get rest days. They didn't get load management. But just watch the games in itself. Just the way that guys cut, the amount of motion, the way that you get vertical and block shots. Like, there is just a level of, I think, these athletes pushing their bodies at a greater rate than ever before, that it does require more athleticism, explosion, all those type of things, that I kind of think like this is, I don't want to say the body's fighting back, but they just can't take as much.
And they're such much better athletes too
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really the case back then. And part of that is because of the training that you have to start at such a young age. That's how people have become better athletes, the resources, everything that you have at your disposal. But it's they start training at such a young age, so they become better athletes, and that's good for the game. I mean, the fast pace, the athleticism, everything that's good for the game. But also we see the downside where you see an increase in injuries. And to your point about how different the game was, one of my buddies is overseas right now, and he sent me a picture like he was at the gym, and on his TV was the Heat Bobcats from like I think it was the 2012 season, and with just something that we were talking about when you watch these games. This isn't 2 decades ago. This isn't the 90s or 2000s. We're talking about 13 years ago. And something you see and you notice is the spacing and the pace. It's just they played so slow, and there wasn't as much cutting. The spacing they play with, all of their actions start at or below inside the 3-point arc. So there's such little actions that there's movements and these cutting when you have such condensed spacing. So it's just such a different game, and you don't have to move. You didn't have to move as much back then. It didn't take as much athleticism. So there's so many different factors that contribute to it. But the game is off. It's better off now when everyone is playing at a faster pace,
for sure.
and you see this heightened athleticism. But again, there are the downsides to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, 100% there. And I don't think there's really a way to just fix this overnight or anything like this. I don't even know if there is a clear answer to all these things. The game's going to continue to advance. Body's going to have to keep up with this. And it's really unfortunate. I feel horrible for Tyrese Haliburton because I do think that he was ready to have this playoff run in itself is more impressive than a ton of like all-time great NBA players have had. And I do think that he was locked in and ready for Game 7. When he hit that last three and started barking at the crowd, saying words that I can't say ever, and certainly not on this broadcast here, I'm like Tyrese Haliburton is locked in and ready to ball. So feel horrible for him.
I mean, it just sucks because we were texting before the game, and like the anthem, the intros, like this finally felt like the NBA's moment that people have just been killing them for ratings. They don't cover big events, and they don't do things right in terms of promoting their own events. And this felt like a Game 7 in the NBA Finals. This felt like watching the pregame of the Super Bowl, and just the hype leading up to it. We were texting. I was so excited to watch this game unfold, and then of course Haliburton's injury happens, and the completely takes the air out of the excitement. And it was still a good game for most of the first half, but then the Thunder did what the Thunder do and just locked in defensively, and they're deserved NBA champions.
Would you like to revisit any of your Tyrese Haliburton takes? I understand that the circumstances are a little tough on both directions, but any thoughts?
I've been saying it all playoffs. I was wrong. Like I had him overrated. I thought he was a very overrated player way before the players voted him that. And that player poll was a little fraudulent in a way, but I was saying Tyrese Haliburton is an overrated player going back to last postseason run where they benefited from beating two teams who were very, very injured. And then even this postseason run, those first two matchups against the Bucks and the Cavs, two very injured groups that they beat. Then they beat a healthy Knicks team, and then they're battling against the NBA's best team in the Thunder, taking them to 7 games. And that was because of everything Tyrese Haliburton does. So I admit I was wrong. He's completely earned my respect. I think people have gone way too far. He's definitely not a superstar. He's definitely not better than a lot of people. People have crowned him being better than that. He's not better than Jalen Brunson, but that'll have to be a summer topic for us. I don't even think he's close to better than Jalen Brunson.
He's certainly close. He's close.
But he's completely earned my respect. He's probably a top 15 player in the league. He is a guy that you can build around with a perfect team, the right roster. So all the credit to Tyrese Haliburton, because it was him and the Pacers group just went on some voodoo magic type run, because the clutch performances that we saw from this Pacers group, specifically from Tyrese Haliburton, hitting some of the most clutch shots in every single series throughout this playoffs, were just special. And I don't know if we're ever going to see a clutch run like that in NBA history ever again.
Yeah, no, it truly was special, and I wanted to make sure we started with the Thunder for this here. But my real takeaway is I'm going to remember the Indiana Pacers more throughout. When I think of these NBA playoffs, I will think of the Pacers more for the run that they went on, the shots that they hit, the fight that they put up, and like I don't know.
I don't like that. I don't like that. I get it, but I don't like it. Like this Thunder, that's discounting this Thunder's group's accomplishment. I get how special this playoff run. Of course, we're always going to remember it from the Pacers, but that's discounting this Thunder's group's accomplishment that won 68 games, that had the second best net rating in NBA history, that went to a Game 7 twice and battled out. This young group that just found a way time and time again when they had no business doing it as the youngest champion in the last 40 years.
You're right.
I think it's discounting the Thunder.
You're right. Like, I don't feel great about it, but I did lay there last night and think, like, as I reflect on these playoffs, like, what is my biggest takeaway? And it is the Pacers. And my next question I wanted to build off that was like, this Thunder team is young, they're fun, they're youthful, they've done things the right way. It felt like the majority of the public, vast majority of the public, were Pacers fans last night. Why is this Thunder team not resonated nationally in the way that I sort of like automatically expected they would?
Well, first off, America loves an underdog story. So this
Sure,
Pacers group,
true.
like I picked the Thunder, and like I picked against the Pacers in every single series. Obviously, I was very wrong on 3 of them, and I thought the OKC was gonna go 5 or win in 5. Everyone loves an underdog story, and then this Pacers group captured America's attention because of some of their improbable wins and their comebacks in Game 1 to the Knicks, in Game 1 to the Thunder, when they were down 7 against the Bucks with 30-something seconds to go. Same thing against the Cavs. So that's how they captured America. And I was sitting there, and a part of me was rooting for the Pacers too. Like I'm rooting for the underdog too. Like, why shouldn't I root for the underdog? This Pacers team will probably never be back in this spot. This Thunder team should be back in this spot. So I get it. I also think this Thunder group, they're not young, or excuse me, they are young. And so there's not a lot of experience, not a lot of exposure a lot of these guys have had. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an absolute superstar in terms of basketball. There's no questioning that. Superstar, face of the league type in terms of his personality, I don't think that's resonated on national stage. Part of it could be because he's playing in Oklahoma City, a smaller market. Part of it because to really be like the face of the league, the guys who've carried the league over the last 3-4 decades, you got to evoke emotion one way or the other. Like, people loved Kobe and people despised Kobe. People loved LeBron and people despised LeBron. Like, you have to evoke emotion as like the face of the league type star. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is just a good dude, quiet dude. A lot of people probably hadn't even heard him speak before this playoff run. He's just a good, quiet guy who puts his head down, puts in the work, says the right thing. So when you have a guy like that who's not gonna like build headlines, and that's why I think people want Anthony Edwards to be the face of the league, because he's a guy who just says a bunch of wild stuff. And he's a guy who's gonna be unfiltered, and he has some off court stuff that people might not love him for. So like, Anthony Edwards is a guy that evokes emotion out of people, and I think that's why people want him to be the face of the league. Shai is a much better player, and as a player, he's a superstar, but he doesn't necessarily have that appeal off the court because he's just a good dude. Like, there's nothing bad you can say about Shai. Like, you can't just hate on Shai because he's just a good dude who handles his business the right way. And to be the face of the league, I think you have to have both sides, where people love you and people hate you.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point there. Shai's got some Jason Tatum to his personality. Yeah. Like, I think those guys. More aura. Yeah, Shai does for sure. Like, Shai's not quite to the level of corny as Tatum, and Shai's a better basketball player for sure as well. I mean, dude's MVP, Finals MVP, champion, has done all these things. Like, they've done everything correct. It has been strange to me that it has felt there's this undercurrent of like anti-Oklahoma City really this entire playoffs, which has just been a bit surprising to me. So the last question off that I have, from the rest of the NBA standpoint, which team do you take more away from? The Pacers going on this team-oriented run sort of in a different way than we've seen in recent years, or it is the Thunder, who kind of embraced a more traditional and obviously very successful rebuild where they built from the ground up, got the draft picks, have built out the way they have, and have all this future capital. From a roster construction standpoint, which of these teams do you think is going to be more influential?
I think it's both, because both of them won with their depth.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's what we've seen throughout these playoffs is, you have to have ultimately one of the best players in the league won yet again. Like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is top 3 player in the league. And who knows what would have happened with the Pacers? They could have bucked that trend, but you have to have a top 5 to 8, 9 player in the league to win an NBA championship. And that reigned true again this year. But both these teams won because of their depth. And it wasn't just about the star power. It was, of course, with the Thunder, the defense, but the pace more specifically, it was what's your 4 through 8 look like? Well, what's your 3 through 6 look like? And both those had no weak links. Like, these teams had no weak links on the roster. There was no one on the Thunder that you could target defensively other than when Isaiah Joe was in. But he was benched a lot of this series because of that. Same thing with the Pacers. Like, all those guys were capable 3-point shooters, and everyone could contribute. There were no weak links with this team. And that's what we're seeing. It's not just about your top end talent like it was like in the 2000s and 2010s, it was all right, who is the best player in the league? Those guys are always going to compete for championships. It's now, what does your 4 through 7 look like? What does your depth look like? And when you have great depth and no weak links on this roster, or the stronger weak links, you could say, then you have a better chance of winning a title. I think there's not that much to take away, like from roster construction standpoint. Sure, with the Pacers, I think this was like an unbelievably improbable run from the Pacers. That it's not lucky. I'm not going to call it lucky at all, but like it's hard to replicate the magic that the Pacers had with all these incredible comebacks, the relentlessness when they just never quit and gave in. And yeah, you could say it's a culture thing. And obviously both these organizations have great cultures, as we saw. But I just think this was just like a special Pacers group that had some voodoo magic type stuff. And there's not that much to take away. Like, yeah, let's replicate this Pacers run. All right, but like, how are you going to find the relentlessness in your group to constantly come back and never give in and quit when there's like a less than 1% chance you have of winning this game? I think it's just like a special run that we probably won't see again for a long time.
I mean, the thing that I do think there is to take is like Tyrese Haliburton, while he's not in this upper echelon of players, this true superstar list, if you want to keep it super tight there, what he does do is he plays his own brand of basketball in a way that I think Indiana just did a terrific job finding guys to complement. Like, to use an example here, I think that's the lesson, is just how well they built out around Haliburton. And obviously, they traded to get him in the first place. Do you think like the Charlotte Hornets could have found guys to play LaMelo Ball basketball, and then that could be successful? And LaMelo has his own questions that he's got to answer. Or do you think like guys like that? Like, I do wonder if that there's something to when you have a unique basketball player who plays their own style, like Haliburton wants to get up tempo, that he is this weird blend of scoring and playmaking. I think there's other guys in the league that sort of fit that pocket, that if you get the right compliments, you can make some real magic happen.
I think that's true. I think that's a great point. I don't like the LaMelo Ball comp because Tyrese Haliburton,
similar to Haliburton, man. Like I see they have. I mean, Haliburton's more of a winning player and a better shooter and all these things. But like the way they see the game, I would probably argue LaMelo's a better passer.
LaMelo Ball is absurdly talented. I won't argue that. The difference is Tyrese Haliburton consistently makes the right play and the right read.
You're right.
LaMelo does not.
You're right.
He probably actually consistently makes the wrong read.
Sure.
But it's a good point that it's like a lot of teams might look at, okay, we have the right star. Doesn't mean we're going to have a top player in the league, but we have the right star. And if we build around him properly, and the Pacers did this by staying under the luxury tax because there weren't some superstars that they had to pay $1 bazillion to. Like they stayed under the luxury tax by building this team. And so if you have the right star and you build around him properly and build around the margins and draft well in Nembhard and Nesmith, even though they didn't draft Nesmith, they got him from the Celtics, but those type of guys, and you make the right trades for a Pascal Siakam when he becomes available from the Raptors, and you build around. And Siakam even like completely changed his game too, to build around Haliburton and Haliburton's play style. When Siakam was a guy who really only operated in the half court, he was not a guy that got out in transition, but you saw him adjust to the Pacers play style, and he became a really good transition player. So I think there is legitimacy to that, where it's like, let's get the right star. It doesn't have to be a superstar, but let's get the right star and build around this guy. But like you always, like you've obviously listened to a million Daryl Morey's press conferences. Daryl Morey always says in his press conference, he's just adamant. He's like, you have to have a top 6 player in the league, or else you have no chance of winning. And that's just what he's adamant about. And that, I think that's what most executives have taken from a team building approach. That like, yeah, you have to have a top 6 guy in the league, or else you're just not going to win a championship. And that reigned true again with the Thunder. But do you think now, like a lot of teams are going to say, okay, maybe that's not true. Like Morey's so stubborn, he would never change his approach.
Sure.
But maybe that's not true. Like, we don't need a top 6 guy in the league. We need the right star for our play style, and then complement him with the right pieces and build out with our depth. Do you think that's the direction like a lot of teams might go in now?
I do, to be honest. Those are the 2 lessons that I walk away from these postseason. Is number one, that I think the barrier for who can be the best player on a championship team is probably, there's a couple more names on that list than I've kind of expected. I think that list is a little bit longer than I had initially expected. And the other part that I really take away is depth means more than ever across the regular season and the postseason now. That neither of these teams were rosters that trimmed the rotation down to 7 guys or 6 guys. These were guys that had different counters depending on what other teams were running. They could go big. They could go small. They could pick up the pace. They could play an all defensive lineup or an all 3-point lineup. That like having different options on your team, I think is really valuable. And I think that was very clear. So yeah, I think that's what I walk away as my 2 takeaways. But I do think like when analyzing this playoffs and how do I apply this to other basketball teams, I do think I take more from this Pacers team than Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I mean, but both relied on their depth. I think with the Thunder, and I brought this point up earlier, is that there's no like it's a copycat league for sure. So like when the Celtics shoot a million threes, it kind of sets the standard. A lot of other teams start shooting a million threes, but there's no one way to win an NBA championship.
Definitely.
Again, we talked about the Thunder were a bad 3-point shooting team throughout this playoffs. 13 out of 16 eligible playoff teams. They won it with their defense. So like it's you building the right personnel, and it's defense wins championships. Nico Harrison, everyone makes fun of him for that, and I completely don't like Nico. I don't like Nico Harrison. I don't think he's a good executive at all for many reasons. But there is legitimacy to defense wins championships, but you also have to have an MVP of the league, like in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I think there's truth to the fact that there's not one way to win championship anymore. If you have a great defense, an historically great defense, and you have the right personnel where you have great rim protection, you have a Chet Holmgren who can guard on the perimeter, you have just guys who are just relentless with their ball pressure, and in Lou Dort and Alex Caruso, and those guys can guard on the perimeter, they can guard on the post, like so much versatility defensively. When you have that, you can win a championship that way. You can also win a championship like the Celtics did last year by being do or die from three, and just how they generate their threes through drive and kick and putting two on the ball and getting defensive rotation, all that stuff. So I think there's no formula to win a championship right now. I think that's what you take away from the Thunder when you're looking at it around the league. It's okay, we don't all have to shoot a million threes. That's not necessarily doesn't have to be our approach. We could do that, but we could get a historically great defense, and that's what the Thunder had.
Yeah, 100% there, and totally agree on that. There's no one blueprint to win. Every team has their own identity, and people should accept that now more than ever. You mentioned down in Dallas there, Nico Harrison. Is there a chance that Matt Ishbia could pass Nico Harrison as the worst basketball decision maker in the NBA?
Yeah, but the difference is Matt Ishbia is a freaking billionaire.
Sure.
So he can do whatever he wants.
Sure.
If you own a team, you can do whatever you want. He didn't get that job because of his basketball knowledge and expertise. Nico Harrison presumably has a lot of basketball knowledge and expertise, which is why he got that job. So that's the only difference. There are so many stupid owners throughout the NBA who just became really rich because of their parents, James Dolan, or because of I don't know. They became billionaires. So credit to them. So they bought an NBA team, even though they're absolute idiots when it comes to making basketball decisions. So that's the difference. Like Nico Harrison has the ability to be fired, but Matt Ishbia is it's a good transition. Let's get into it.
Yeah, that is a good point about the billionaires there. And I will say that if I ever magically stumble upon a couple $1 billion myself, I will be purchasing an NBA team. That would be right at the top of my list.
Let's split a team if we ever come into that type of wealth. Let's split a team.
Sign me up, Sam.
We'll buy the expansion team.
Yeah, I would be in for that. They can be the Seattle Supersonics. We can be wherever you want us, Adam Silver. I would be game for that.
Our draft war room would be pretty heated, though, based on some of our previous conversations.
Definitely, and one we're gonna finish up with here.
It'd be like that Howie Roseman clip where like Howie Roseman made a draft pick and then he's dapping up his executives, and the one executive a few years ago was just furious about his draft selection. That's what our draft war room would be like.
Yeah, that would be heated there. But the Phoenix Suns, I think, stick a fork in them. This organization is over. They're done for a decade, I think. They yesterday traded Kevin Durant to the Houston Rockets. Love this trade from Houston's perspective. And I should have the full details picked up. I know it was 5 second-round picks, the 10th overall pick in this. Jalen Green as the real key part of this. They did not get a Jabari Smith, a Reed Shepherd, a Cam Whitmore. Basically no youthful talent with Jalen Green as the primary piece.
Dylan Brooks was the other guy. Yep.
And Dylan Brooks was the other guy, yes. I absolutely hate this for Phoenix. I don't think it was enough for Kevin Durant. They did not get control back of their future picks. And Houston, I love taking the swing. What were your initial impressions of the Kevin Durant trade?
Yeah, let's take it from the Houston perspective first. I mean, just a brilliant trade, an absolute textbook perfect trade. Even if it doesn't work out necessarily, there is no harm in making this trade. You give up the 10th pick. Whoever they were going to draft with the 10th pick had no chance of seeing the NBA court for at least the next couple seasons because of how deep the Rockets are. The Rockets had the number 3 pick in the draft, drafted the best shooter in the draft, Reed Shepherd, and he couldn't play at all for them because of how much depth they have. So they got rid of that number 10 pick.
Cam Whitmore barely played. They've had guys stashed for like 2 years now that they just don't have lanes for.
Exactly. So they didn't need that pick, got rid of it. Jalen Green, he was their leading scorer. So you look at it on paper, you're like, oh, they lost their leading scorer. my God, they did. They should be cheering they got rid of Jalen Green. Just one of the more inefficient players of the last couple of seasons. So much talent, but so much inconsistency. So inefficient. Was awful in his playoff debut. I believe averaged 13 points on 37% shooting. Was just a non-factor. Times he was benched against the Warriors in that first round. They should have gotten off of Jalen Green, and they did, and they should be celebrating it because he's just not a winning player, not a guy you want as one of your best players. So Dylan Brooks, yeah, he was a key part for them. Good veteran. When they gave him that contract a few years ago, he did his role of just being the defensive stopper and a 3-and-D guy and be the veteran presence on a youthful team. And that's what he did, and he deserves credit for that. But again, they have so much depth, not a guy they really need to keep around. And they got Kevin Durant. Like the Rockets had the second best record in the West last year, but despite not having a top 10 offense, in the clutch, their clutch net rating was in the bottom half of the league. Their clutch offensive rating, bottom half of the league. That was because they didn't have a go-to option offensively. They didn't have a fluid, reliable scorer. Now they do. And not just a fluid, reliable scorer, one of the most seamless, effortless, efficient scorers over the last 30 years in the NBA. Kevin Durant has been that good. And look, maybe he doesn't impact winning the way everyone wants him to because they hold him to the standard of like LeBron James. But I never thought that was fair because he's not the same player that he is. When he's on a team that is ready to win now, and you can plop him into any offensive system because he's that efficient as a scorer from three in mid-range, as a driver, averaged 26%. Averaged 26 points last year, I believe, 43% from three, 52% from the field. So he's still such an efficient, good scorer, and he doesn't have to be the leader. He doesn't have to be like the leader type when you have an Ime Udoka there, who's a great culture builder and a great coach, and he is the ultimate players coach leader. So he doesn't have to be a leader type. He doesn't have to be a guy that you have to rely on like the Suns did a ton. So I think it's just a perfect fit. The Rockets gave up absolutely nothing of value to get this guy. And again, a big factor too is if the Rockets, Giannis isn't going to become available over the next couple months. If he eventually does become available, maybe it's a year from now, the Rockets did not forfeit a lot of their assets. Like you talked about, Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith, Tyrese, and all these guys, they didn't forfeit them. So if they want to put a package together for Giannis and pair him with KD, they can. Because they didn't really give up that much at all to get Kevin Durant. And so it just an absolute theft by the Rockets and a great job by their front office to stay patient and ultimately get Kevin Durant.
Yeah, no, 100% there. I love taking the swing. I'm not sure how anybody could walk away from these playoffs without the takeaway of that team just desperately needs a go-to scorer. And Jalen Green, while I think I'm still a little bit more open-minded on him than most, that I do think the guy, like the top-end talent is still too much for me to fully punt on. The variance in his game is just too strong for him to ever be looked at as like a baseline foundational type of player there. The highs are high, but the lows are low with him, and he is far too.
They're low, all right. They're low.
Yeah, they sure are there. So from Phoenix, like I don't even think they're a playoff team next year. I think they probably win 33, 35 games. And,
yeah, well, I think they're gonna flip Jalen Green. Jalen Green and Devin Booker will not.
But to who and for what? Like.
That's a good question. Like the Jalen Green market,
Kings,
I believe he's getting paid $33 million next year. The Jalen Green market is not active. I don't know who would want him, especially with that contract. And I believe it's an ascending contract too. So it's going to be more and more after this season. So I don't know. You're right. I don't know who would want him. But again, I like the Suns shouldn't want him. Maybe they keep him for the first half of the year and then flip him by the deadline if he increases his value. But a Devin Booker, Jalen Green backcourt just doesn't work. Like no. they need a
and Bradley Beal's still there.
Yeah, well, they're going to buy him out, because he just can't be on the roster next season. If they have to buy him out for that absurd price, they will. They just have to start over, which is the question. Like, what do they even? First off, they didn't even get their picks back.
That's what's crazy.
From the Rockets.
Crazy. How can you, if you're Phoenix, how can you not walk away with at least like a Jabari Smith or Cam Whitmore, somebody you can talk yourself into,
or your picks,
control of your draft picks? Yeah, that's why it felt clear cut to me that it would be the Rockets the whole time for Kevin Durant, but they didn't walk away with remotely enough. Now, granted, when you look around the league, Miami wouldn't even offer Jaime Jaquez for this dude. What are we doing here?
I mean,
Toronto apparently wouldn't include Jakob Poeltl. Yeah.
I mean, it does kind of show how people view Kevin Durant as a guy who is going to be turning 37, and if you're going to trade for him, you're going to sign him to a 2-year extension, which is going to be $110 million. I believe, around that over the next 2 years after next season. So that's an expensive guy for a guy who's going to be in his very late 30s. So it's kind of shows what the market was. But again, the Suns didn't have a lot of leverage. Like the Suns and KD, that partnership was ending no matter what. Both those guys wanted to move on from each other. So everyone around the league knew that, and the Suns didn't have a lot of leverage in these talks. When you think about what they acquired Kevin Durant for, they gave up Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and 4 first-round picks to get Kevin Durant, and they went through 3 playoff runs with him, 2.5 seasons, 1 playoff or 1 postseason series win in those 3 playoffs with Kevin Durant, given what they gave up to get him, and then what the ultimate return is Dillon Brooks, Jalen Green, and the 10th pick in the draft, and a bunch of second rounders. It's just it's unbelievable, but they have to start over. And now the question is, like, you're building around Devin Booker, who I really like, I think is a great player. Building around Devin Booker with what? And for what? Like, eventually, it just feels like, I know that Devin Booker loves it there, and I think he wants to stay, and he wants to be the guy. But eventually, it's like, what are you actually building around Devin Booker for? To be the 10th seed, to maybe win 1 play-in game and then get knocked out in the second round of the play-in, not even make the playoffs? You don't have the right personnel. You don't have the right assets to build around Devin Booker. So eventually, I think he'll be on the move, and he's the next star. I think a lot of teams might be circling around the league.
Are you on the same page as me that Tyrese Haliburton is better than Devin Booker?
It's hard to say no after this run.
Good.
It's hard. Like, I think Tyrese Haliburton impacts winning more.
Definitely.
Like, it's hard to say otherwise, especially after what we just saw. I love Devin Booker though. Like, I really like Devin Booker. I always have, and I think he, like, this guy was the best player on a finals team too a couple years ago. Again, with the right team around him. Let's not forget that. Like, Tyrese Haliburton was the best player and dictate everything the Pacers do. Devin Booker had the right group around him with a Chris Paul, with a Mikal Bridges, with some other guys. But Devin Booker was the best player on a team that went to the NBA Finals too, and not that long ago. So I think when stuff is working for Devin Booker, he's right there with Tyrese Haliburton. I don't think there's a big gap one way or the other. I'm still a huge Devin Booker fan. I think he can impact winning at a high level.
If I had you guess Devin Booker's career 3-point percentage right now, what would you guess it is?
Probably 36.
35.4%. He's only shot over 35% from 3, direct 35%, 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons of 4 of his 10 NBA career, and 4 of his 10 seasons in the NBA. I do think, like, I like Booker too. I think, like, he goes about his business the right way, does a really nice job, his off ball motion, competes. I'm a Devin Booker guy, but I do think he's a dude that I think we prop up maybe a little bit more is the case. Like, I don't think there's any. This Suns, I agree with you. He needs to be on the move. I don't know what they do. And the Bradley Beal conversation, I was looking at some of, like, the comparisons for buyouts. The only really comparable, like, examples are Blake Griffin and Kemba Walker, who were still massive deals. Both those guys dealt with injuries. Like, that was sort of why that was the case. Bradley Beal just stinks and doesn't want to be there. And, like, it has the most loser energy of, like, any active athlete. I don't know how you can even get around this.
It's an untenable situation, which is why you have to buy him out, and it might probably will be the most expensive buyout in NBA history.
Yeah.
But it's like, he doesn't impact winning. You don't own the team. His market is literally 0. Like, I don't even know if you can get a second-round pick for the guy. Second-round pick might
Probably
be more valuable
not
than Bradley Beal at this point, based on what that contract is. So he'll get bought out and then probably sign for, like, the minimum somewhere. And maybe he'll still be an impact player, but no one wants him for that contract. So it's just. It's an awful situation that the Suns put themselves in by doing the opposite of what the Thunder and Pacers did, by just acquiring superstars, not actually building out a team. So that's the formula that I think everyone realizes not to follow now in the NBA. I don't think Bradley Beal will be playing on the Suns come opening day. I just don't. And that's in everyone's best interest.
He also has a full no trade clause, so he's, like, in the room for these conversations in a way that
he has to dictate where he wants to go. But even if he didn't, like, who's trading for him? Nobody.
I don't think anyone. Like, there was already concerns for Bradley Beal, like, when there was the first Washington trade, that he'd kind of tapered off as a guy that, like, wanted to win, it seemed, and that has been put on full display out there in Phoenix. I can't imagine that, like. Out of all teams in the NBA, I think future outlook, just looking at the Suns are dead last on the list.
Probably. I mean, I mean, they don't have their picks, so that's right. The big thing. They still have a top 15-ish player in the NBA, which is, like, a huge asset. And I think you can build around when it's the right team. He was the best player on a championship team. They don't have the personnel or assets right now to build around him. I still think that if you have a top 15 player in the NBA, like I can't think of anyone worse right now, but like the Wizards, like they have a lot of picks and they're going to be tanking, but can't really tank in the NBA anymore. So it's like what's the
Alex
Wizards?
Sarr,
Who's your prospect? I really like their
Coulibaly.
front office too, but it's and hopefully Derek Queen with Alex Sarr, which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, maybe the Suns probably have the worst because they definitely have one of the worst owners in the game, and there's a lot of bad ones. So it's kind of hard to even be considered one of the worst owners in sports. It should be an honor. It should be a badge, a privilege to be considered the worst owner in the NBA because there's such awful ones across the league right now who just can't get themselves out of the picture and let their actual executives that they hired to do stuff operate.
Yeah, step your game up, James Dolan. Go take back the throne for worst owner in the NBA. But before
based on firing Thibs, if that was him, then he might have.
Yeah, fair point. And I knew we want to touch a little bit on the Eastern Conference side of things. I want to bookend the Knicks part of that until they hire a coach and we kind of have a clear idea of the vision from there because we're still at that stage of the process here. But
you think the coach matters that much? I mean, it's going to be Mike Brown or Taylor Jenkins, and I don't think Jason Kidd's completely out of it. Whether it's any three of those guys, I'm not like that doesn't change how I view the Knicks for next season. If based off it's any three of those guys.
Well, I think the slant is like this is our roster, this is our talent, and we're gonna have a new, choreographer of putting this all together. Of this is how the offense is gonna run. So less about like I don't think I'll have any immediate feelings on who the hiring is, but I do think like depending on who the decision is and how this offense looks, will drastically impact my opinion of whether or not this team is legitimate or not. I do think that there's a world where you can get more out of what Thibs was getting with that roster, but we're gonna have to see it. Like at the same time that this team was. Almost went to the NBA Finals this year. That they were in the Eastern Conference Eastern Conference Finals there. So I don't know. That's sort of how I feel. That.
Yeah, I mean the fixes are obvious. Like, I mean, not practically they're not necessarily obvious, but it's like
that was
abandoned. They completely abandoned the Towns Brunson pick and pop, which worked really well in the first half of the season. Abandoned it in the second half of the season. Completely abandoned it in the playoffs. Mikal Bridges was completely underutilized. Would like to see him more as a ball handler, getting downhill, secondary playmaker. He was kind of relegated to the corner. So those offensive fixes are obvious, and I think that's what the new coach has to sell to whoever, or excuse me, sell to the front office in his interviews. But again, like. I think all those coaches are. I think Jason Kidd would be the worst of those three in terms of Mike Brown and Taylor Jenkins and Jason Kidd. But I think all those coaches know what they have to address, and like coaching only matters. Like, of course, it matters, but as NBA front offices view these coaches, they obviously think they're highly replaceable, so it only matters so much. The roster is way more important, and I think we have an idea of what that core will look like, which is why I think we can still talk about them to an extent without their coach being in place.
I think easy to identify, not as easy to fix is kind of
100%. Yeah, I'm not saying I could fix it. I'm not a coach, but yes, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, but we'll keep it in the West real quick. But to wrap up the Kevin Durant conversation, are the Houston Rockets championship contenders next year? 100%.
Yeah. They were the 2 seed in the West last year, and the only thing that held them back was their inexperience and their poor offense in the clutch late in games, and they answered both those things with this Kevin Durant trade. Like he as long as he stays healthy, and of course he's gonna be turning 37 pretty soon, so it's a big if, but he's been relatively healthy the last couple of seasons since the Achilles when he came back from that. So I absolutely think that that the Rockets are, based on the odds board, they leaped up to second, so they have the second best odds to win the West behind the Rockets. But depending on what the Nuggets do, I would put the Thunder, Rockets, and Nuggets in a tier of their own in the West.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair there, that I'm buying into what the Rockets are selling there. I do think they also hadn't needed to make a decision between Jalen Green and Amin Thompson to the point where those two were stepping on each other's development a little bit, and that they made the right choice by keeping the Thompson twin around. So shout out to Houston. Awesome offseason. Well done. And there's obviously still finishing touches they can put on this roster here. Do you want to touch on the Eastern Conference, or should we dive into some NBA draft talk?
Let's do the East a little bit, and then we'll do some more in depth on the draft. The only thing with the East is just like it's just wide open. It was open before the Tyrese Haliburton injury, but this might be the worst conference in NBA.
Play the song. Play the song.
Play the song. But there's a lot of teams that are looking at like it is now or absolutely never, and that starts with the Philadelphia 76ers, who like if there's ever a time to have hope. And Sixers fans should never get hope, and they don't at this point because obviously their souls are crushed every time a glimmer of hope creeps in. It's now or never though. Like this East is wide open. No Jason Tatum, and the Celtics are still up there on the odds board, but no Jason Tatum. Like the Celtics aren't going to be a legitimate contender. They're going to look different. Jrue Holiday probably won't be on the team, but it's essentially a gap year for them. Pacers are completely out of it now without Tyrese Haliburton for all of next season. So those are two teams, the last two Eastern Conference champions, the Pacers and the Celtics, who shouldn't be in contention because injuries to their best player for all of next season. So the East is wide open. And if you're like the Bucks and Giannis, Giannis might even have an idea of sticking around even more and might want to stick around even more because he's looking at it like, I'm the best player in this conference. Like I can win this conference, this awful conference, because I'm the best player. The Cavs are still the favorites as they should be. The Cavs have a prime opportunity after an earlier exit than they would have hoped after winning 64 games this year. They're the favorite at plus 270. The Knicks are right there, plus 300. Magic plus 440, Celtics plus 475, Sixers plus 1100. I think people are heavily sleeping, and then the Pacers plus 1500. And then people are heavily sleeping on the Pistons at plus 1900. That's another team that could easily be like, okay, we had some scars last year, but we took the Knicks to 6 games. Like we had an opportunity to win a bunch of those games that we lost. And our kind of inexperience and youthfulness showed up. So the Pistons, especially with getting Jaden Ivey back, we'll see what they do in free agency. Malik Beasley's a free agent. Some other guys that are pretty key to their team. The East is wide open, and there's a ton of different teams that can say, oh, we got to go all in now. And that's what the Magic did with the Desmond Bane trade, and they should be in contention. But there's a lot of teams that are saying it is now or never. This is the season, and a lot has to go right, of course, with injury luck and everything. But it starts with the Knicks and Sixers and the Cavs, who should be at the top of those lists, saying this is our time. Like, this is our time to win the East because this is a weak Eastern Conference.
Yeah, at 10:50 p.m. last night, I fired off the tweet that the Sixers can 100% win the East next year, and I think they can.
I don't think that's true, but
well, they can. They certainly can. Like, look at this. Look at these options that we're talking about. Cleveland is the favorite. Get out of here. There's zero chance that the Cleveland Cavaliers could win the Eastern Conference.
Zero chance. They won 64 games last year, and they lost to the Pacers, but that was because a big reason Darius Garland had a serious toe injury.
Do you think that they run this back and get better results? I know we disagreed with this.
I definitely think they get better results. I'd be surprised if they're not in the conference finals. I definitely think they get better results.
I think you have to break up Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, and I don't think Jared Allen is a playoff player.
I completely disagree on the Darius Garland thing. I get the defensive concerns as the backcourt. Darius Garland, again, had a serious toe injury that hampered him and hindered his ability to defend even more. So that's why the Pacers were constantly targeting even more than they usually would. When you have the right, like we have a DeAndre Hunter who's a good wing defender, when you have a dominant front court defensively with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, who was defensive player of the year, then you're going to have an opportunity where you can kind of mask some of those concerns with the small backcourt who can't defend in Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. So I get the Jared Allen thing. Like there are concerns with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, but they were the best offense in the league during the regular season. It's the defense that has to be better. I think in this East, they're capable of winning it. And I think they're the best team in the East. Like I just do, based on the personnel and talent. I really do. I think this team can make leaps and bounds next year. They got some playoff experience under Kenny Atkinson. And I think this team can win the East.
I think they have to take a swing. That I think they're
very. But why now? Because they just won 64 games. They lost to a team that was on a magical run in the Pacers, and they dealt with injuries. And yeah, they looked lost throughout that series, but they dealt with some injuries. So why not run it back when the East has gotten so much worse?
Because this is now back-to-back head coaches that have stood at the podium when they've gotten eliminated and said this team doesn't have the heart or the mental toughness. This is now back-to-back coaches that have not got better results, that we're running into the same exact problems in consecutive postseasons. And I just don't think your 4 best players are capable of playing together on the court. And that, to me, calls for a shakeup.
But we saw it offensively throughout the season. They were the best offense in the league. Evan Mobley took leaps and bounds as a player.
Evan Mobley not a part of the problem here.
Him and Donovan Mitchell. Darius Garland, I thought had a really good year, and he's dealt with a lot of injuries in his career. I thought he had a really good year. Jared Allen is the one question mark, but I thought him and Evan Mobley actually paired pretty well together. Like despite all the spacing concerns that people had about 2 bigs who can't really shoot, even though Evan Mobley became a slightly better shooter this year, those spacing concerns weren't a thing throughout the season because of how they used Evan Mobley even though he can't shoot, as a guy who would get a lot of top of the key nail touches, running a lot of DHOs through Evan Mobley. So I thought this team easily showed that they can work together. And then when you added DeAndre Hunter and you add some of the depth that they had, Max Strus and Ty Jerome probably won't be there, but a lot of those guys
shouldn't be there.
this is a team that showed they can play together offensively.
I think they had an excellent regular season. I don't think they're any different from like a 2015 Hawks or, one of those teams that
2015 Hawks had to run into LeBron James every year. There's no LeBron James in this conference.
Sure, that part's true, but I just don't see it with the Cavs. I think they need to make a shakeup for me to take them seriously this year. I pretty much have them written off as any sort of.
I think you run it back one more year when you have a wide open East and you kind of build that character, build that toughness through some of these losses, and then why not run it back with a really weak East? And then if things don't work out again, then you can consider shaking it up. But there's no reason to shake it up right now and take that risk after you won 64 regular season games.
I think Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley are awesome, and that's where the conversation needs to start of how do we fully optimize these guys moving forward is how I would approach things from the Cavs. And I think the answer to both those questions has to do with moving on from Jared Allen and Darius Garland. So we'll see. We can dig deeper into that for the conversation. To just rip down this list, the Knicks, you and I have had plenty of our battles about. I think we can leave that one. The Orlando Magic I do take serious. That I think that people are still sleeping on them a little. They have climbed to third at plus 600 odds, so obviously some respect there. I think deservedly so. That I think Desmond Bane's going to be a difference maker, and he seems thrilled to be there, by the way. So shout out Desmond Bane with some of those quotes coming out. The Celtics, I think, are going to be more competent than a lot of people are giving credit, but I think we leave that door open too until we see what their offseason ultimately unfolds as. Porzingis, Drew Holiday, like Derek White, who of these guys is for sure going to be back? Jaylen Brown, could he be on the move? They're going to have to make some tough decisions this summer, so we'll see on that. And then it's the Sixers, tied with the Pacers for the fifth best odds there. Why not the Philadelphia 76ers, Sam Oshtry?
Because in the conference finals, if the Sixers ever get there, you play a game every other day. There is no way Joel Embiid can ever play a game every other
Tyrese
day
Maxey?
in a heightened what?
Can Tyrese Maxey?
Yeah. But who's your best player on the floor? Who's everything going to run through? Everything is about your best player on the floor, and that will be Joel Embiid. And he is not capable of playing every other day, and not just every other day, but a heightened intensity. Like we've seen how intense and physical these playoffs have been, which has been awesome to watch. The more I think about it, the more I'm just like, Joel Embiid can't play in this environment, especially this late into the playoffs. So as much as we want to say, like, yeah, I think the Sixers team actually is going to have a really good regular season. And I think they're going to be a top 3 to 4 seed in the East, like somewhere in that range. The more I look at these playoffs, the more I'm like, Embiid is incapable of playing this late into the postseason every other day with this type of physicality. So I like the Sixers on paper. Like, I think they're one of the best teams in the East. But do we really trust Embiid at this point to play this late into the postseason?
I don't think he can play the version of basketball that he has played to this point, but I do think that there are changes that can be made, him playing a lower usage role, that there being more for Tyrese Maxey, more for Jared McCain, that there can be a shift in identity in a way that does translate to more team success and that is sustainable for Joel Embiid. That I do think that there's a pathway to that. Stu was the best player in the entire world 18 months ago. That it was that short time frame that Joel Embiid was the front runner for his second straight MVP. And I understand a lot has changed since that point. There's no way around the injury concerns and all these conversations, how he looked on the floor last year. But I guess, like, to circle back to our conversation about how, like, that list of who can be a best player on a championship team might be a bit longer. I think I can make a pretty convincing case right now that Tyrese Maxey is at worst equal with Haliburton.
No, he's not.
How
Tyrese
so?
Maxey is not even close, and he's developed a lot as a playmaker and as a processor coming off pick and rolls and all that stuff. He's developed a lot, and that's been great to see. He is not even close to the level of Tyrese Haliburton. The way Tyrese Haliburton makes his teammates better and create shots for his teammates, Tyrese Maxey is even close to that point. We just obviously it's hard to really put any stock into the Sixers past season, but Tyrese Maxey struggled with his efficiency a lot when Joel Embiid is out the floor, and that's throughout his career. I don't think those guys are on the same level at all.
I mean, they're different. The two Tyrese's stylistically there. I think Maxey's a better scorer. I think Maxey's a better defender. He's certainly a better shooter.
You put Tyrese Maxey on this Pacers team. You think they're in the NBA Finals?
I mean, Haliburton's such like an engine of it that I think probably not from that direct answer, but I don't think they're that far off. Like, I really think that that's that's a close I think Tyrese Maxey, people are still sleeping on. Like, even for what a
I
disaster.
love Tyrese Maxey, so I don't want to discount him. Like I love him, and I think he hasn't even scratched the surface on the player he's become. And as a scorer and as a shooter and all that stuff, sure, yeah, he's definitely better. But why I had to eat my words about Tyrese Haliburton is because I underestimated how much he could impact winning and how much he could create for his teammates and make his teammates better. That is why Tyrese Haliburton and the Pacers made the finals and were one game away. Tyrese Maxey does not have that ability just yet.
Yeah, possibly not. But I don't think that I think he can get there. Like, I think he could be there at this time next year is, I guess, what I'm getting at with Maxey. Like, he doesn't stop getting better. He's going to be miles better than he was last year. And I'll just make that case. I want to get to the draft conversation.
Wait, real quick. Can I give you? So yeah, I mean, based on like, I think the Sixers are top 3 team in the East next year on paper, like for sure. So theoretically, they should compete for a championship. The Joel Embiid factor is there. But like the East is wide open. Can I give you a sleeper team? That like, don't be shocked. June 23rd, 2025, right now, in 12 months from now. Don't be shocked. No, not Toronto. Don't be shocked. Close. Don't be shocked if this team is in the NBA Finals next year in a wide open East. It's not the Raptors. I really don't like the Raptors at all, but it's the Atlanta Hawks. It's the Atlanta Hawks. Yeah. This team was good last year, like really good for the first couple months of the season until Jalen Johnson went down. But he was on a trajectory to become an all-star. Like he had an awesome season last year until he got hurt, averaging almost 19 points a game, 10 boards, 5 assists in 36 games, and then he got hurt. And the Hawks were really good with him. Zachary Rishichar showed a lot of flashes as a rookie. I really like his potential. Of course, Dyson Daniels made huge jumps, not just as a defender, but as an offensive player too. And then Trae Young probably had the best season of his career, not scoring wise, but I thought as a playmaker, making the right play, not just being a guy that jacks up a ton of shots. I thought Trae Young took a huge jump forward. This team was good if Jalen Johnson can return to what he was coming off that injury. I think this Hawks team is not just like a top 5 team in the East, but a team that legitimately could shock people in a wide open East where it's like the Hawks are about to make the NBA championship. Don't be surprised when I'm telling you this now.
Yeah, I don't fully hate it. I do like Jalen Johnson a lot, and that's definitely the X factor. He was straight up terrific last year. Like his processing, his playmaking, his ability to get a rebound, push the pace, and attack downhill. I was a bit of a skeptic of his coming out of Duke because I still don't like the way that he kind of handled himself through that entire situation, leaving the team and all those kind of things. But the bottom line is this dude can play, and if that is the version of him that is real, it was a bit of a short sample size last year. That does change the trajectory of the Hawks there. So I don't hate the shout there. An interesting call. And I do think that they've done a nice job collecting a roster of guys that do complement Trae Young, guys that can catch lobs, guys that can shoot threes. So just getting big wings to surround him with. So not a bad shout there. I won't attack you for that too much. What I will attack you with is some NBA draft takes right here. So I only got about 10 minutes before I got to hop off. I want to get right to Derek Queen. We went back and forth a little bit. You're sleeping on my man, Common Malawach.
No, I'm not. You're sleeping on Derek Queen. I'm not sleeping on Malawach. I'm not. But you're sleeping on Derek Queen. So I have to hate. If I'm going to prop up one guy, you got to tear down another. That's how this works.
So, yeah, you hit me in both categories here because I'm lower on Derek Queen than the consensus, and I'm higher on Malawach, the consensus. I don't think it would be the worst decision in the world if the Sixers took him at 3. I don't think they should do it. That wouldn't be my preference, but that's what I kind of believe in this. Make the case why Derek Queen is a better basketball player or a safer NBA draft pick than Malawach, because I think that it's just not.
So you texted me that the Kaman Malawach's
floor and ceiling are higher than Queen.
Yeah, I can give you the floor. Because Kaman Malawach just is it is what he is, and we'll talk about that in a second. The ceiling is ridiculous because Derek Queen's ceiling, if he figures it out, gets in the right situation, everything comes together. His ceiling is miles ahead of Kaman Malawach. And I think it's the second or third highest ceiling in this entire draft. That's how high Derek Queen's ceiling is. You just look around the league. You do not pass up on guys, big men, who have the skill sets that Derek Queen has. In terms of as a passer, his vision, a guy who can put the ball on the floor and drive to the rim, his touch around the rim. He was a good free throw shooter, and he has such great touch. His ball handling ability, all of it. You don't pass up on bigs like that. It's rare. It is rare for bigs to have those qualities. It just is. So, yeah, you can say there's a lot of defensive concerns, what position, 4 or 5. All that are legitimate concerns, and I have answers for them, but they're legitimate concerns. The point is, when you have a big man who is that type of skill set, when everyone's looking for a big man to everyone's looking for bigs like, I'm not saying it's Nikola Jokic, but like a Nikola Jokic, like an Alperen Sengun, like a Domantas Sabonis, guys who have that type of skills as a big. They're going to be great NBA players because it's so rare, and he has all of it. And to the point about Kaman Malawach, it's like he's going to have a really nice NBA career, no doubt. But he is what he is. Like, he is a rim-running lob threat. He's not a guy who can pass. He's not a guy who can operate out of the short role as a playmaker. He's not a guy who can put the ball on the floor. He's not a guy who can shoot. He doesn't have those skills. He doesn't have those, even though he's a good free throw shooter, he doesn't have those skills. He's a rim-running big. Shooter. He's a great rim protector. He's a lob threat. And there's a value for that in the NBA. But in terms of Derek Queen's skill set, those guys don't even compare.
So for starters, they shot the exact same free throw percentage, and
Malawach is a good free throw shooter for sure.
Malawach also a better 3-point shooter than Derek Queen.
He's not a better 3-point shooter than Derek Queen. That sample size. That sample size is nothing. Both guys didn't shoot from three. Derek Queen has better. If you look at their shots, Derek Queen has better touch. Derek Queen only made 7 threes on the year, but 5 of them came in the last 4 games of the season. So he made improvements as the year went on.
Or he got lucky and hot for one game there.
It was 4 games. He had a 3 in 4 of those games.
All right, so here's what I really want to attack on Derek Queen. I'm glad you said he's not Nikola Jokic because he's not even in that conversation. I don't see whatsoever this vision about this quote-unquote hub of the offense type guy. He's not a good playmaker. He's a good passer for a big man. He is not an above-average playmaker from an NBA draft perspective or an NBA perspective. Just looking at his stats last year, he averaged 1.9 assists per game, Sam Oshtry. 1.9. He had a negative assist-to-turnover ratio. He had 19 games with 1 or 0 assists last year. He did not register over 5 assists in a single game. They play the games for a reason, man. I understand he has these highlights where it looks cool or whatever, but he did not consistently set the table for that Maryland team like at all. He's talented. He has talent.
Everything ran through him for that Maryland team. Everything ran through him.
Then why are the assist numbers not high?
I'll tell you why. Because it's not. You can't just always look at college assist numbers because you're relying on college kids to make shots. Assist is you pass it to a guy and he has to make the actual shot for you to make it in. Like, I don't care as much about assist numbers. I care about the passing ability and instincts and the vision. Like, that's what matters to me when I'm looking at how good of a passer a prospect would be in college. You can see, does this guy have passing instincts? And you develop that too, for sure. Like, he's going to continue to develop that, but it's clear that this guy has natural passing instincts in a way that a Sabonis, a Sengun, a Jokic have, where you have these big men who have these passing abilities. And it's a lot about the short roll too. Like, that's what we want to see. A lot of screen and roll, and you're going to hit guys in the short roll. And he's going to make plays when you get 2 on the ball and you have a 4-on-3 advantage. And that's what Derek Queen, I saw him, he was really good at as a passing instinct. So I don't care about the assist. I saw him become a good passer.
So for starters, that's just so low on my priority list when looking at big men for what I care about there that I just don't care if you're that gifted of a passer, to be honest. I honestly, like, hardcore disagree with that archetype of player, and that's part of the reason I was in the
you don't value like how much you run screen and roll and putting 2 on the ball, and then as a short roll playmaker, like, how important has that been for guys for bigs to be good out of the short roll? Like, that's so important now. Purely
dependent on the context of a team and what you have surrounding.
Yeah, of course, but
I was a Nikola Jokic skeptic for a long time because I strongly feel you need your big man to be able to protect the rim well. And like, I don't think it is the best archetype to be targeting for guys who have defensive concerns, who have all this talent offensively.
Jokic is the best player in the league last few years and won an NBA championship as a not great rim protector.
He is, but my point is that is an outlier, not the rule. There's a reason why Domantas Sabonis has never been on a legitimate contending team. There's a reason why there's still questions about Alperen Sengun. You can dive down a bunch of Europeans from past years who have this stylistic play, which Derek Queen sort of has there. He's different from that. He's got some played in the blacktop to his game for sure, that he can just get the spots and all that kind of thing. When I'm looking at what Malawach brings to the table, he's like, there's no chance Derek Queen's a more impactful defender than what Malawach is going to be immediately there. I do believe in the shooting touch. I think that free throw touch is legit. And I've used this phrase before, but he's so just inquisitive in his approach to basketball. He's just figuring things out, that he is incredibly raw. Derek Queen is pretty much a finished product at this point.
No, he's not. Why is he a finished product? He's 19 years old. He's elevated his game every single year, even as the Maryland season went on. Like, think about the McDonald's All-American game. He was the MVP, and then he just got so much better in his first year in college. Why is Derek Queen a finished product? He's 19.
He is what he is. Like stylistically, I know what he is. I think Malawach is still figuring out who he is as a basketball
player. If Derek Queen gets a lethal 3-point shot, Like his ceiling is I can't even raise it
Ben
anymore. But his
Simmons, if
ceiling is
Ben Simmons got a
unbelievable.
3-point shot, he would have been a Hall of Famer.
There's a big difference between those guys' work ethic. Derek Queen has a great work ethic. Huge difference. You can say that about a lot of people. A lot of people haven't developed it, but a lot of people have developed a good 3-point shot. And I have no question about Derek Queen's work ethic to get there. So I think that's a real possibility.
I think Malawach's like ceiling is like a top 5 center in the NBA. Like if he puts together the shooting touch, which
like what did you see from him at Duke last year? Like that, other than being a rim running big who just caught lobs, was really good finishing around the rim, and finished everything because he's really good. He's so athletic and good around the rim. And then also as a rim protector. Like what else did you see from him last year?
I believe in the touch that he obviously it's limited sample size, but 76% of the free throw line is legitimate for a big man there. The 3-point shot looked good to me by the end of the season. And again, the volume was not high enough to read into it significantly, but he's impressed in workouts, and I get their open gym looks once again. I think the touch is there. And I think like he knows who he is as far as a basic skill center in a way that appeals to me. I think the defense is going to be that special that he's going to be one of the best defensive big men in the league. And, all this combo to me is enough that's what I would place my bet on.
The defensive stuff is real for sure, but like we see guys who are that, like a Derek Lively type, who's just strictly like a rim running big who can catch a lot of lobs and is a great rim protector around the rim. But like, what is he more than that? Like he doesn't he can make free throws, but he's not a guy who you're ever running anything through. He's not a guy you trust in the short roll as a playmaker. He's not a guy that you like would run any actions for, because that's strictly his role. That's what I see in Malawach. Like I don't see him ever becoming. And look, he just started playing basketball like 6 years ago or so.
Yeah.
So the development track can be there, and I don't want to tear him down because I think he's going to have a really good, nice NBA career. But when you have big men who are that as skilled as Derek Queen, and they're rare, like they're very rare. The footwork is excellent. The touch around the rim, the vision, the ball handling ability, his capability of driving, like how he works off the glass, like his DHOs, short roll playmaker, everything that you see NBA teams do offensively, he did those actions at Maryland. So I like, you don't pass on guys who have that type of skill set. You just don't. Like you can figure out the positional concerns later and the defensive stuff later. When you have that skill set at his size, you just don't pass on it. And usually NBA history tells us you'll be rewarded for it. And last thing, you say Sabonis and all those guys are all-stars, borderline all-stars. If Derek Queen becomes those, he's a success story. Those guys, you could say the concerns with Sabonis not impacting winning. That's legitimate. But Sabonis also has been the second best player on his team most of those years. And I don't think that's right by the Kings, because he shouldn't be. But I still think if he's an all-star or anything close to it, Derek Queen had a very successful career.
Yeah, I'm not saying he should go undrafted, but I would put a friendly wager on the Malawach career arc here. But we're going to have to bookend this conversation for now. I got to get over to writing some DraftKings article. We'll be diving into a little bit of those Eastern Conference rankings, so to make sure to stay tuned from that. You guys make sure you're subscribing wherever you're watching at. Shout out to you guys for tuning in. For me and Sam Oshtry today, we're going to get things back over to the Fox Sports style here. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll be back to talk with you next time.